Hello class, just wanted to begin our Module 3, Week 3, focus on lighting systems. This will be a very brief overview. In a lot of ways, lighting does not have nearly the amount of complexities as sound reinforcement. There's definitely a lot to running a lighting system. However, sound and reinforcement have so many different levels, especially regarding to running that system. But lighting, I think one of the areas that many of us are lacking in is how to set up one of these systems, how to make good purchases in the direction of those systems. But we're going to do a brief overview of understanding more of the lighting systems here today. In this picture, you'll see three different examples of some lighting. I wanted to, especially for worship, church setting. Here on the left, you see a truss with clamps holding on to these Parcan lights. They look like they're just kind of a standard incandescent Parcan light. They might be LED. It's kind of hard to tell in this photo, but you get a general idea here. See, 10 years ago, LED lighting was becoming more normal, but it was pretty expensive. Now LED is almost completely standard in most settings, and they're incredibly energy efficient, incredibly cost efficient, and also heat. Lighting creates a lot of heating issues directly over the stage, the people on the stage, and so LED really helps out in so many different ways, and I'm sure y'all are aware of that. But in the photos here on the right side of this picture, you will see in the bottom right what I would consider an established church, maybe more traditional type church, but the lighting is pretty creative and pretty expressive, and it's nice and clean. So it's not only just the stage lighting, but you've also got lighting in the entire sanctuary there. But you can see some examples of some of the creative backdrop lighting that they're doing as well. And then, of course, the top right corner, you see the photo of what we would consider to be more, and we'll talk about this, more of the concert type lighting. You see all the trusses hanging from the ceiling there, which have all the lights attached to them. And you see the congregation or the audience lighting is almost non-existent, which is, again, just two different styles of lighting. And this kind of gives you that dynamic contrast. The first fixture that we want to take a look at is called a wash fixture. If your stage is needing a lot of light, this is evenly distributed across the stage, a wash fixture is probably a good fit. It gives a good spread on the whole stage to give a good color. It's not a very defined beam or defined light. It just gives color to the stage. It evenly washes. It's the most standard, and it's the most common use of light. It's one of the more lower end, but it's good. It's a really good light to use. And especially nowadays, most of these wash lights come with different colors and abilities that you can custom tweak as needed. The fixtures work well as long as there's nothing behind your stage that you're trying to keep off the lights. Again, because it spreads so much, it'll bring up pretty much everything. It's not very directional, all that to say. But you don't always have the capability to contain a beam very well. That's not what you're designed to do. It's hard to define where the lighting goes. It just kind of goes everywhere, which again, it's a good use. But these types of fixtures have generally one purpose and lack complexity, meaning purpose is to add color, to add some light to the stage, but it's not complicated, not nearly as much as some of the other fixtures. And you'll see this photo here, you'll see a picture of what that kind of looks like on a stage and how it just adds a lot of color, but you can see the truss behind it is defined, maybe more than you might want for a certain scene, but it gets the job done. The next fixture that we're going to talk about is a spot fixture, or spotlight as it's commonly referred to. This kind of fixture is, in comparison to a wash light, is very known for its edge or angle that you can see very clearly compared to that of the wash light, which is more of just a broad stroke, if you will. You can typically see a very strong circle lit on the stage or around the the person that's being lit. And having spot fixtures allows you the ability to have a circle of your stage, or even up in the air if you want. And so you can come in from different angles. It doesn't necessarily have to come from the back of the room. It can be up on a truss. These fixtures are great when you want to emphasize a certain point on your stage. So you really want to highlight someone or something, because there's a very sharp edge and you're not going to have a lot of light outside of that. So it's very defined. It's very controlled compared to that of a wash light. When it comes to spot fixtures, these are great to use when highlighting parts of your stage and not having the light reveal areas that you want to keep out of view if there's things that you don't want people to see. One of my favorite features of the spot fixtures, some of these features have the ability to add patterns or gobos where you can see really creative design with that. With those abilities, you can add texture to your stage or the space above the stage if you want to. Because of those types of features, it really expands what you're able to do with the spot fixture. You've got a lot more customization options. So here in this photo, you'll see how defined the lighting is. And of course, there's some haze or fog around the room that gives some of that definition, but the beam is very clear, and there's little to no additional lighting there in the background shot that you see here. So the spot really gets more of the job done of what they want. You can also see like a spotlight coming from the far left that also gives some definition to the person here in the middle of the shot. But this is just an example of what these strong beams look like. The next fixture that we're going to speak of is called beam fixtures. These fixtures are a newer type. They come with more options. These fixtures send out a light that can change colors, and they're very sharp looking on your stage. The beam lights have one specific duty, and that is to send a direct light where it's pointed. And some of these fixtures, aside from color options, they also have patterns and gobos and things that you can add to it. The downside is that since it's a beam, it can be hard to decipher what pattern is on the stage. So sometimes it's hard to figure out which one you're looking at based off of your lighting sequence and fixture setup. But personally, if you're building and designing a new rig, I would suggest considering beam lights last. There's a handful of different reasons. If you have an established rig, you're wanting to make an impact on your stage, then beam fixtures would be a good option to consider. So it's not that this is not a necessary fixture, but it is kind of a later on in progress kind of fixture. It adds a lot of dimension to your stage, but it's not as essential as the first two that we just mentioned. And like I mentioned, there's a lot of these different types of fixtures, but these are the most essential. In this picture, you can kind of see an example of what the beam lights look like. You can see my brain jumps to Star Wars, kind of like a lightsaber kind of look to it. It's a very defined beam, especially, again, a lot of these lighting setups have a hazer or a fog machine. Typically, a hazer is more professional and gives a consistent stream of haze. But so you can see this definition in the lighting here, so you get an idea of what that looks like. Next, I want to talk about intelligent lighting, or PTZ, point, tilt, zoom. Intelligent lighting systems can be used in a variety of ways. There's a lot of customization. Now, this does relate back to some of the things we just mentioned, but this gives you this like a robotic, controllable point, tilt, zoom. You can angle things exactly the way you want them to. And the features that exist on many of these lights allow for great customization features, so you can get very defined parameters that you're working with, or defined areas that you're working with. These are the most expensive light fixtures that you can purchase. So typical church, your average size church, if you had one of these, you are doing really well. If you really want to get fancy, two of these would do a lot of work for your average congregation of 200 or more. The larger the church, 500 to 1,000, a handful of these, 5 to 10 at most, unless you're very modern setup, but very flexible and working with it. But these can be distracting at times, since you have to be careful with how you customize these fits. Next, it's important to talk about lighting stands or trusses. These lights have to have some kind of stand to be set up on to properly emit their designed subject to be able to hit the exact location you're trying to hit. And you can't just, sometimes you can set these on the ground or certain positions for backlighting, but typically 90% of the time you need to have it on some kind of truss or some kind of system. So there's T-stands, like in this picture you see here, a very standard, kind of a DJ sort of setup. And there's also trusses, which are often installed permanently in the ceiling area structure. But there are also the cases where these trusses can be attached to something like a T-stand or a stand on two different sides, and they're able to have a retractable arm to raise and lower, because otherwise they have to get up on a ladder and install all these things, but like portable systems for concerts and shows and things like that. Okay, so to finish up this week's module, discussing on how you control your lighting system. So there's 3 common ways to do this, especially in churches. You see the wall panel system. Aside from basic light switch flipping up and down, or I've even seen some home, the knob that you turn counterclockwise and clockwise to fade. I've seen those done before in smaller churches, but the best option really is an affordable option is the wall panel system, where you can program a certain sequence, and we'll look at a picture in just a second, but program a certain sequences of scenes and just press a button and it fades all your lights to that scene. The more customizational option is the computer software, which has a similar type design to it. It's based off of scenes. It's set up. It's very easy to run, but it can be complicated to set up. You have to have some knowledge about these types of systems to be able to run that, and you have to learn how the software works. But it is very user-friendly, very good for your volunteers and teams. That's an option I recommend to a lot of churches, is the computer software. Again, because it's very easy to use and run. And the most professional and high-end setup is using a lighting board, and sometimes in conjunction with a screen and computer software as well. But the board is the most complex, but it's also the most customizable. And so this picture, this next that you see here, and this is our last slide, really just shows you some examples. In the top right corner, you see the software where they can have different scenes or different colors or different things. And you just take your mouse and click on it, or you might have some quick key sequences on your keyboard. But the bottom right, you see that's the push button panel that a lot of churches have for the simplicity of it. And here on the left, you get kind of an image or a picture of what some of these lighting boards look like. There's some similarities to the way they look like a sound mixer with the faders, but they're still very different. And you see the right side, those are a lot of the customizational keys. And so the most professional way to do it is with a board, and then sometimes even in conjunction with software. So you've got both hardware and software uses. But in conclusion, lighting is actually there's really a lot of ways you can quickly get involved in lighting and learn how to use lighting. It's a lot of creativity. It's a lot of trial and error to see how the lighting looks. But of course, there's still some industry standards that we can look to, and we'll talk more about those here this next module. Thank you so much.